This boy's name is Carl. He lives with his parents in a remote village. There his father worked as a corn farmer. Watching his father work hard every day, he felt sorry for his father and he took the initiative to help him. At first he did not allow it. He said Carl should focus on studying and playing like other kids. But because he kept insisting, his father finally allowed to help him. A few years later, Carl has grown up. While working in the garden, suddenly his mother came to tell him to get ready. It turns out that today is Carl's departure day to take part in the United States Naval Military Training Selection. At their separation, his father asked him to promise never to return to the village again. Sad though, his father still has words because he wanted his son to be able to focus on work and become a successful person in the city without having to think about his family. But when he arrived at the military base, Carl became a cook. At that time the American military did not allow black people to join the military. They still think black people are slaves who have to work under the feet of white people. The next day Carl and his friend saw a white student in their class swimming. His friend explained that the swimming schedules of white people and black people were different. Heard about it, he wondered why it had to be distinguished. Yet they are both human. He then recklessly ventured into swimming. When Carl came, everyone there immediately. When the captain of the ship came, he said he was impressed by Carl's swimming speed. The captain then put him into the rescue swim team. Hearing that, Carl was very happy. He then immediately wrote a letter to notify his parents. The next day saw a helicopter crash in the middle of the sea. Panicked, the ship's captain immediately ordered a diver to save the helicopter pilot. After a long wait, the diver finally made it out. The diver's name is Chief Sunday. He is one of the divers with the rank of Master Chief in the Navy. Master Chief is the highest diving team. Unfortunately, even though the pilot was successfully evacuated, but his life could not be saved. Then a second diver descends to rescue the co-pilot who is still in the sea. Here one diver can only save one person, because in that year the diver's clothes weighed more than 200 kilograms. Time for the second diver to go down. The safety rope, causing the diver to immediately fall to the bottom of the sea. Chief Sunday then desperately jumps in to save him without wearing a wetsuit. In the end they both managed to survive. As a result of the incident his lungs were badly injured and he was admitted to the hospital. The doctor also forbade him to dive again until he was completely healed. Heard the doctor's verdict, he was so frustrated and he made a fuss. The next day he was tried to account for yesterday's commotion. In the trial the entire military navy was present, including Carl. The captain then decided to demote him to coach the dive team. When the trial is over, Carl goes to the captain and asks to be allowed to participate in diving training at headquarters. He said he was amazed to see Chief Sunday's rescue yesterday, and now he is determined to become a savior like Chief Sunday. Seeing that strong determination, the captain's heart melted and he allowed him to switch divisions from the swimming division to the diving division. The next day, he arrived at the training camp. When giving the letter of duty to the guards looked confused because so far no black person had ever been allowed to enter the Marine base. It wasn't long before Chief Sunday came out. It turns out that he will be the coach at the dive camp. Carl then says the purpose of coming there, but Chief Sunday instead mocked him by saying that the black man did not deserve to be a diver. Black people just deserve to be cooks. Hearing his insult, Carl could only be silent and patient. After Chief Sunday left, he remained waiting at the gate until evening. When he returns, he was sick of seeing Carl still outside the gate. He then drove him back to his village. But Carl refused and said that he had promised his father that he would definitely become a member of the Navy. See his determination. He then finally let in. In the camp, he was approached by a student named Snowhill. He was the only white person willing to say hello to Carl, regardless of skin color. He then informed that the camp was led by a former Marine named Mr. Pappy. Snowhill then escorted him to his dorm room. There was seen a new white student who did not accept Carl's work. The next day Carl's first training begins. Chief Sunday explained that in this first exercise there would be a lot of people failing because swimming and diving are two different things. He who knows Snowhill is the best swimmer in his hometown. Then he tests Snowhill diving skills.
Point up, step forward, march. To survive is to trust. I'm the only man that get through my car.
Due to not being able to dive, he immediately took Snowhill out of training. After day passed, Carl along with other students continue to undergo training until the written exam arrives. He got bad grades. The officer will notify if the next test there is a bad score again. Then he will be expelled from training. During semester break, he chose to go to the city library to study. There he met a librarian named Jo. She is a student majoring in nursing. But when Carl asked Jo to guide him to study, she refused and said that the lesson about the Navy was very difficult, and it took months for Carl to understand. Seeing Carl's persistence, she finally decided to help him study. And finally Carl managed to get good grades. In the afternoon Chief Sunday returned to teaching diving. He then orders two new trainees named Rourke and Ashar to weld the sunken ship. But when Ashar was welding again, Suddenly the ship moved until it almost fell into a ravine. In the midst of the panic, Ashar's air hose got stuck. Above everyone heard Rook and Ashar's cries for help. Carl then volunteered to save them both, because they had no other choice. Chief Sunday then gave them 5 minutes to save them both, before they run out of air.
The ship's weight is crushing those pipes, Chief.
Got 5 minutes of air in that suit if he don't panic.
You screw up the chasing, just breathe easy.
Please. I wasn't made.
Carl has been instrumental in saving the lives of his comrades. The commander still refused to acknowledge his services just because he was black. The other students who saw Carl's patience feel sympathy, and slowly they begin to want to be friends with him. The next day he called his family in the village. On the call, his mother informed him that his father had died. Heard the news. He is so sad. His mother told him that his father purposely did not tell him about his illness so that Carl could still focus on studying and achieving his goals without worrying about his father's condition, who was seriously ill. He Joe to come to accompany him. While waiting, Carl is approached by a woman. Turns out she's Chief Sunday's wife. Saw Carl cry. The chief's wife then said that they both had the same fate. Currently she is also sad because of their wedding day. Chief Sunday instead chose to party with his partner. She then invites Carl to go to the bar where her husband is partying. When they get to the bar, suddenly all members of the Navy looked at Carl and reported it to Chief Sunday. Chief then immediately scolds and says black people don't deserve to be there. Heard the insults. He became angry, and for the first time he dared to go against his coach. With emotion he said that his coach was jealous because he was better than him. When Joe was at the bar, she was confused by the commotion. Chief Sunday then challenges Carl to a breath-holding underwater race. If Carl loses, then the chief will remove him from the training camp. But if Carl wins, he'll let Snowhill back into camp. Carl, who was very fed up with all the insults from his coach, immediately decided the challenge. Ventured to propose to Joe. He promised after graduating training later, he will definitely go to see her. The next day Mr. Pappy called for Chief Sunday. He asks Chief not to pass Carl in tomorrow's exam. No matter how, Mr. Pappy didn't want any black people to graduate from the camp, even though they both don't like Carl. But Chief hated the way Mr. Pappy abused his position for personal gain. Since yesterday's incident, he realized Carl was much better than him. But nevertheless he could not refuse the orders of the superior. He then relayed the order to Carl. There they both argue because Carl still wants to take the exam. The emotional chief immediately slammed the radio that Carl's father gave him, seeing the only thing left by his father was damaged. Carl is very sad. The next day when all the participants were getting ready, unexpectedly Carl came. He then looked at his coach with a look full of confidence. See that look? Chief finally had no choice and allowed him to take the exam. After all participants are ready, the exam starts. From above threw the bag containing the test kits into the water. But when it was Carl's turn, the bag was torn up on Mr. Pappy's orders. In the water, he knows nothing. He was still trying to find the equipment. Several hours passed. The participants one by one successfully completed the exam, until only Carl was left in the water. Mr. Pappy, who monitors the exam, then tells Chief to let Carl stay in the water until he runs out of breath. There he felt a dilemma. He couldn't refuse Mr. orders because his career would be ruined. While Joe was at work feeling a bad feeling about Carl, she then rushed off to the exam venue. Until late at night Carl was still under the sea. The chief and the other examinees seemed to be starting to get worried. Mr. Pappy kept shouting over the phone from afar to tell Chief not to help Carl. In the midst of worry, he finally decided to go against the boss's orders, and immediately ordered the other participants to raise Carl to the surface. Be silent. He then packed his things on the bed. He was surprised to see that his father's radio had returned intact. He found out that Chief Sunday fixed it. A few years later, Carl is now a senior diver in the Navy. He is also married to Joe and has a son. Currently he is carrying out the greatest mission in the history of the United States, namely to find a nuclear bomb that sank on the seabed. The commander told him when the bomb exploded, then the power of the explosion can make an entire region completely destroyed. At first the commander doubts if Carl can complete the mission alone. But he again proved to everyone that he succeeded about his success. Carl's success was broadcast live across America. Carl, who used to be despised just because he was black, now he is a hero. The commander then ordered the other members to raise the bomb to the surface. But when the bomb was When Carl wakes up, he is shocked. Why is he in hospital? Joe then informed him that it was the result of yesterday's incident. His leg was almost severed and he was sentenced to be unable to walk normally again. Hearing this, he was shocked. He felt ashamed of his father for failing to make him. On the other hand, Chief Sunday is seen in a mental hospital due to severe depression after his diving license was revoked. The next day, when he was sitting alone, a nurse gave him a newspaper. In the paper, he saw the news about Carl's accident yesterday. As a former teacher, she felt compelled to go see Carl. In the hospital, the commander and his assistant came to see Carl. Not long after, the naval captain named Hanks also came. There, Carl begged to be allowed to return to work when he recovered. But seeing condition, Captain Hanks reluctantly stated that he would never be able to dive again. Hearing Captain Hanks' words, he then showed me a newspaper story about a proud Air Force pilot who only had one leg. He asked Captain Hanks to give him a few weeks to prove that he too was capable of carrying out the pilot's duties and becoming the pride of the Navy. He also asked the doctor to amputate his leg so as not to interfere with his mission. When all gone, Joe, who had overheard their conversation, immediately scolded Carl and opposed his overbearing desire. There, Carl feels a dilemma whether he should give up on his dream and live a normal life with his small family or keep pursuing his dreams. After making up his mind, finally he chose to pursue his dream again. While recovering from surgery, he started practicing the habit of living on only one leg. While practicing, Chief comes in and says that yesterday when he read the news about Carl, he felt that the fate of both the same, namely that they were both slumped because they could not dive anymore. But as a former teacher, he knew who Carl was. In the eyes of the chief, Carl is a man who never gives up. He then promised to try to convince the Navy officials to let him return to diving. He will also help him through the postoperative recovery period. The day of the conference has arrived. Determination to determine the fate of Carl in the Navy. Unfortunately, at the door, a guard barred Chief from entering the courtroom. After Carl answered a few questions, Captain Hanks ordered one of the guards to bring a wetsuit. He challenged Carl if he could walk 12 steps in a wetsuit that weighed more than kilograms. Then he would allow him to be a diver again. Outside the room, the chief snapped and forced the guard to let him in. Finally, out of fear, the guard gave the chief to enter the courtroom. When opening the door, he was surprised to see the higher-ups were telling Carl to wear a wetsuit weighing more than 200 kilograms. From behind, Carl's wife and his son have just arrived to witness the struggle of their father. Chief asked the higher-ups for leniency by explaining that ordinary people find it difficult to walk in such a heavy wetsuit, let alone Carl. But Carl continued to reassure the chief with a confident look. He will prove that lack is not an obstacle for someone to achieve his dream. Seeing his student's determination, Chief chose to support Carl's decision. Then after everything was ready, he started to stand up and started his 12 steps.
Navy diver, stand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. God damn it, Cookie. Move your ass. I want my 12. 9, the Navy diver. Now you report to this line, Cookie. Howdy.
He finally managed to complete his 12 moves. Seeing Carl's efforts, Captain Hanks and all the higher decided to agree to Carl rejoining the Navy divers. Suddenly the whole audience then stood up and applauded in amazement to see Carl struggle. In the midst of the festivities, the chief felt that his duties as a teacher had been completed. He then walked away and saluted. Final salute to the black student who has taught him a valuable life lesson, namely the determination to achieve his dreams.